Hello everyone. In my last video, we talked about how to use ChatGPT to do emotion detection. And in this video, we are going to continue on where we left last time. Particularly at the end of the chapter, we will be able to know how to do analysis and obtain some interesting results, such as in book number 4, chapter number 33, The Death Eaters is the most fearful chapters in the entire Harry Potter novel series. Another example would be on book number 4, chapter 21, The House Elf Liberation Front is the happiest chapter of the entire Harry Potter novel series. So let's get started. So here is the agenda for today's video. First, we will quickly spend about 1 to 2 minutes review what had been done in the last video, and then we will go over the emotion detection analysis results. Lastly, we will go over the code in Jupyter Notebook so that we will understand how to implement this in Python ourselves. During the last video, we first talked about how to sign up an OpenAI account and generate the OpenAI API keys. Then we talked about how to install OpenAI Python library and then how to interact with ChatGPT in Python. Lastly, we gave an example on emotion detection with ChatGPT on the first chapters. In order to do emotion detection with ChatGPT, we need to first prepare our prompt. And in the last video, we have broken our prompt into several sections. The first section is the instructions. So we are going to tell ChatGPT to please detect emotions from the below passage that is surrounded by triple quotes, and please only return emotions separated by commas and nothing else. If we place this instruction in front and then followed by our passages inside the triple quotes, then ChatGPT will give us the response that looks similar to this, which has the emotion that has been detected from ChatGPT. Also, this chunk of passage are limited to 1900 characters long, because last time when we asked about ChatGPT how many characters can we send it in a prompt, ChatGPT replied that it can only receive up to 2000 characters. So by limiting ourselves to a 1900 character long passage, we are reserving 100 characters for our instruction and triple quotes. So that's the basic setup for emotion detection with ChatGPT. In this video, we are going to basically repeat this process, but this time, instead of only on the first chapter, we are going to perform the analysis on the entire Harry Potter novel series. Let's first go through some interesting statistics. There are about 200 chapters in all of the 7 Harry Potter books, and these 200 chapters can be broken into around 3400 chunks of passages. Remember, each passage has 19,000 characters. There are about 21,000 emotions detected in all of the 7 books. Among these 21,000 emotions, there are about 5,000 unique emotions. And this list on the right shows a list of unique emotions versus their total count. So for example, the most frequent emotions in the Harry Potter series is fear. It happens 346 times. The second most frequent emotion is excitement. It happens 326 times, etc. As you can see, some emotions are very similar. For example, there's anger and there's angry. This slide shows some similar emotion examples. So for example, anger, angry, and angrily, they are similar. Fear, scared, frightened, horror, they are all very similar. Happy and happiness are very similar. So one might want to use one single emotion to represent all similar emotions within a group. But for simplicity, I didn't do that in this video. I'm going to upload my emotion data to my GitHub repository, so people who are interested in that analysis can do it himself. The emotion data looks something like this. So all the file is under this directory called Harry Potter Chapters Emotion, and within this directory we have one file for each chapter, and if we open one of them, for example the Firebolt, you can see the emotions showing up for these chapters. So for example, we have this happily, stressed, twinkling, impatiently. Those are all the emotions that has been detected by ChatGPT from this chapter. As another example, let's say book number 4, chapter 22, The Unexpected Task. we get some emotions such as angry, hoping, etc. So I hope this gives you a pretty good idea about what the emotion data looks like. Let's look at some interesting figures that I generated from this analysis. This figure I'm showing here is a figure that plots the happy emotion percentage versus all the chapters. The percentage goes from 0 to almost 7%. And from this plot, you can see that this chapter 421, the House Elf Liberation Front, has the highest happiness percentage, which is almost like 6.5%. Okay, so this is the happy emotion percentage figure. Here is another figure for fear percentage. Okay, so fear emotion percentage goes from 0 to 10. And you can see that on book 4, chapter 33, the Death Eater has the highest fearful percentage, which is close to 10%. Okay, if we zoom out our figure, we can also look at these overall fearful emotion distributions across the entire Harry Potter series. And we can clearly see that on the very last portion of the series, we have more fearful emotions than the rest of the series. Okay, the last analysis result that I'm going to show is the ChatGPT cost for this entire analysis, which is about $2.74, which in my opinion is quite cheap. After talking about all the analysis results, let's go to the Jupyter notebook and see how we can implement this analysis in Python. First of all, I'm going to import some libraries. Of course, we need the OpenAI library to talk to ChatGPT. I'm importing these OS libraries. These OS libraries will allow me to extract all the files within a directory. I'm also importing the time library. As you can see later, after I receive a response from ChatGPT, I'm going to wait for 2 seconds before I'm sending a new prompt to ChatGPT. On the second cell, I'm going to load the OpenAI API key. We talked about how to generate this key in my last video. Over here, I am still saving my OpenAI API key so that you can have an idea what the key looks like. But I already deleted this key in my account. So if you just run it in your Jupyter notebook, you will not be allowed to talk to ChatGPT. You would have to generate your own OpenAI API key and then paste your key over here. This third cell is used to construct a helper function. So we talked about this helper function last time as well. Basically, it will accept a prompt, and once you call these get completion functions, it will send this prompt to ChatGPT and you will get some response back. Okay, over here within this cell, I'm specifying my instructions, and then also I'm specifying the triple quotes. So the instruction is just a string that tells the ChatGPT to detect emotions and return emotions separated by commas and nothing else. Triple quote is just a string of triple quotes. Notice I'm using some escape character here. This cell of code does the actual work of sending prompt to ChatGPT and receive response and write those emotions that we get from ChatGPT into a file. So first, I'm going to specify my chunk length, which is 1900 characters, and then I'm going to get a list of directories from these Harry Potter chapters because my data is within this directory. Okay, and then we are basically going to loop through each chapter. So there is a nested loop here. The outer loop is for us to loop through each chapters, but once we inside this loop, we will break each chapter into chunks, and then the inner loop is looping through each chunk, sending each chunk to ChatGPT by calling these get completion functions. The prompt will be our instructions plus triple quotes plus passage plus triple quotes. And once we get this response, we are going to open a file inside this Harry Potter chapters emotions with the same chapter name that we got from here, and then write that response to this file. Again, we are going to use A as append because we want to append the next list of emotions to the end of the file instead of overwriting it. Within this inner loop, I'm also printing out some intermediary informations, and then at the end of each loop, I'm allowing 2 seconds wait time to avoid server gets too busy. But actually this doesn't solve the issue. I still get timeout error frequently, probably 7 to 8 times across the entire analysis. I think this is because the OpenAI server sometimes gets too busy, and therefore whenever that timeout issue happens, you can come back to this outer for loop and then modify your directory list, start from where you left last time. As you can see, I'm still preserving some output that I got when I run my code. Sometimes ChatGPT will reply with some weird result. So here is some examples. It's returning a lot of annoyance. Obviously this is not correct. So after I got all the results from ChatGPT, I went back to individual files and cleaned the data manually. After I've obtained all the emotions and written them into files, now I need to read those files into Python and then save those into a list. So I'm using the same methods to get a list of files under these Harry Potter chapters emotions, and I'm going to initialize an empty list which I name chapters emotions, and then I'm going to loop through each directory. Within each loop, I'm going to read the contents into this chapter emotions without the S plural, and then I'm going to append these singular chapter emotions into this plural chapters emotions list. In the end, you can check the length of these chapters emotions, and we can see that there are 199 chapters of the entire Harry Potter series, and each element of this list is basically a long string of emotions that are separated by comma with a white space. So what we can do now is that we can use Python's string method called split. We can split this long string by this comma and white space. That way, it's no longer a long string, it will become a list. So if we do that, then these chapters, individual emotions, will become a list of lists. It still has 199 elements, each representing one chapter, but each element is also a list itself. So for example, on chapter 1, where we are giving it 0 index, we got a list of emotions over here. And you can also check the length of chapter 1's emotions. We can see that there are a total of 86 emotions detected in chapter 1. But you can also notice that the very last element is an empty string. This is because when we use these split methods and we are going to split our long string with comma and white space, what happens is if we are ended with comma and white space, then the Python will think there is an empty string at the end that needs to be extracted out. So to remove these empty strings, we are going to loop through each element and we are going to query everything but leave the very last element out. If we do this process, then we can check the last element again of chapter 1's emotion. We can see that it is no longer an empty string. Now the very last emotion is admiration. Now if we want to know how many emotions are detected from the entire series, we need to flatten our list of lists first. So these 3 lines of code will flatten it, and after that we can check the length of this flattened emotions list. So we get about 21,000 emotions detected. To get a unique emotions and their count, I'm using this collection library, and specifically I'm using this .counter method and followed by .most common. This will ensure that the emotion with the highest occurrence will appear on the top. So once I do that, I can print that out. It will become a list of tuples. Inside the tuples there are 2 elements. First element is the emotion. Second element is the number of occurrence. So as you can see, for example, horrible appears 31 times. Wonder appears 18 times. And if we check the length of our unique emotions, we can see that there are about 5,000 unique emotions. Now, if we want to know what's the happiest chapter, we will first need to get a chapter name list. This is simply our file name, but without the very last 4 characters .txt. So we are going to extract all the file names from this directory list, but query everything except the last 4 characters and save that into this chapter name list. Because we are going to plot the chapter name versus the happy percentage, therefore we need this list of chapter name. Okay, to get the percentage, we first need to know for each chapter how many emotions are detected, and that information will be saved under this number of emotions. And then we need to know how many times happy emotions occurred for each chapter, and that value is saved under this number of happy list. Lastly, to get the happy percentage, we just need to divide the number of occurrence of happy by the number of total emotions for each chapter. So that percentage will be stored under this variable which I call happy_PCT. Okay, here are some of the results. For example, there are 1.18% of happiness in chapter 1. Chapter 2 has 0%. Chapter 3 has 2.5%, etc. And then we can plot those information into a horizontal bar graph with chapter name list versus the happy percentage. Okay, I went through this part of the code in my last video, so I'm not going to go through it again, but this is the result that we saw earlier in the slides. And then we can save that into some file which I named it chapter happy percentage. If we want to get emotion percentage for other emotions, we can rewrite the above code with a dynamic variable called specified emotions. So for example, if we want to plot the same figure, but this time we want the emotion to be fear, we can specify here. Number of fear emotions per each chapter is stored in this variable. Emotion percentage is calculated by the ratio. And then this part of the code is to plot the figures. Lastly, we can save the figures into a PNG file. And that's pretty much it for this video. I hope you enjoy watching it. Thank you for watching. If you really like this video and you want to see more, please like and subscribe. Other than that, I will see you in my next video.